Everybody knows the name Titanic. It's this massive legend, right? A blockbuster movie, a story we all think we know. But when you peel back all those layers of myth and twisted metal, the real story, it's just so deeply human. And that's exactly what we're going to get into, starting with one single, kind of haunting sentence.
Just let those words sink in for a second. The experience is wonderful. I've never been better. Sounds pretty happy, right? Almost ecstatic even. So who do you think would say something like that? And more importantly, when?
That quote, as jarring as it is, comes from a letter. It was written by a survivor, a woman named Bertha Mulvihill, while she was on the rescue ship. I mean, can you even imagine? It's just a shocking look into the kind of trauma and maybe even the dissociation someone would feel after surviving that kind of nightmare. It's the perfect place for us to start, because it's a powerful reminder that this isn't just a story about a ship. It's about the people on board. Complex, fragile, and incredibly resilient.
To really get the tragedy, you first have to understand the dream. You know, for the thousands of people on that voyage, the Titanic wasn't just the way to get from point A to point B. It was this huge symbol of a brand new, amazing technological era. And for so many, it was the very ship that was carrying them toward a whole new life.
Now, when you think of third class or steerage, you'll probably picture something pretty grim, right? Crowded, dirty, just miserable. But the reality was completely different. See, White Star Line's whole business plan revolved around the booming immigrant trade. They knew that if they gave these third-class passengers a fantastic trip, those people would write back home, and guess what? All their friends and family would choose White Star when it was their turn to make the journey. It was actually smart business.
And this really shows what a fantastic trip actually meant. I mean, forget packing your own food for the journey, you got 3 full meals a day served to you. Instead of these massive open dorms, you got private cabins for your family. There was electricity, running water, even automatic flushing toilets. For a lot of people, that was something they'd never even seen before. For many of those passengers, the conditions in third class on the Titanic were honestly better than the homes they had just left. For 1 week, it was a taste of a much better life.
Okay, so the passenger experience was incredible. But it wasn't just the passengers who had this immense faith in the ship. The builders, the crew, the public, literally everyone was just captivated by this idea that the Titanic was, for all practical purposes, unsinkable. So where did that belief even come from?
Well, it all came down to this number, 4. The Titanic was built with these watertight compartments. The engineering was so revolutionary that the ship could suffer a direct head-on collision, completely flood its first 4 compartments, and it would still stay afloat. Nobody had ever built a ship that safe. The kind of accident it would take to sink it was so incredibly unlikely, it was pretty much considered impossible.
But then, the impossible happened. And here's the thing. The sinking of the Titanic wasn't just one mistake. It wasn't one unlucky moment. It was this slow-motion disaster, a chain reaction where every single link was a separate, improbable failure of technology, of communication, and of human judgment.
This timeline really shows how it all fell apart, piece by piece. It starts with this bizarre weather event, a cold water mirage, which basically created a false horizon that hid the iceberg. Then, a massive communication breakdown. Just before 11 p.m., a nearby ship, the SS Californian, tried to warn the Titanic about the ice field. But Titanic's radio operator was totally swamped with passenger messages, and he just snapped back, "Shut up, I am busy." So the guy on the Californian just switched his radio off and went to bed. Minutes later, the iceberg hits, tearing a hole through not 4, but 6 compartments. The ship was going down, and even then, help was so close. But the distress rockets they fired were confusing, and that same mirage made their more slam signals totally unreadable. It was a perfect, tragic storm.
In the chaos that followed, this brutal, unspoken hierarchy just took over. Who lived and who died wasn't simply a matter of luck. The cold, hard numbers from that night tell a really powerful story about class, about gender, and about the grim math of who gets to survive.
Just look at these bars. They're staggering. On the one hand, you have first-class women. 97% survived. If you were a woman in first class, you were almost guaranteed to make it out alive. Now look at the children in third class. 2 out of every 3 of them died. They were more likely to die than to live. And the group with the absolute worst odds? That would be the men in second class. A devastating 92% of them died.
This table gives us the full picture. The famous rule was women and children first. But what this data really shows us is that it was more like first-class women and children first. 62% of first-class passengers survived. That number plummets to just over 25% for third class. where you were on the ship, far from the lifeboats, stuck in a confusing maze of corridors, was basically a death sentence.
And if you need just one statistic to truly understand the brutal inequality of that night, well, this is it. There were 12 dogs on board. 3 of them survived because their first-class owners carried them onto lifeboats. That's a 25% survival rate. A man traveling in third class, he had a 16% chance. Think about that. A pet in first class had a better chance of survival than a person in steerage.
For decades, the Titanic was just a ghost, right? A legend lost to the abyss. Finding it again in 1985 is almost as famous as the sinking itself. But the story of how it was found has this secret twist that sounds like it's straight out of a Cold War spy novel.
And don't take my word for it. That's a direct quote from the man who found it, Dr. Robert Ballard. See, he wasn't just on some historical quest. His whole expedition was secretly being paid for by the U.S. Navy. His real, top-secret mission was to find the wrecks of 2 lost nuclear submarines before the Soviets did. The whole search for the Titanic thing? That was just his cover story.
And here's the crazy part. That secret mission is exactly how he ended up finding the Titanic. While he was mapping the sunken submarines, Ballard noticed that when they imploded, they left this long trail of light debris on the ocean floor. And a light bulb went off. He realized the Titanic must have done the same thing as it broke apart. So he stopped looking for the hull, which was like a needle in a giant haystack, and he started hunting for the debris field instead. It was absolutely brilliant.
So, after days and days of searching, with only 12 days of funding left for his cover story, Ballard was getting close to failure. And then, in the dead of night, an image flickers onto the screen, one of the Titanic's massive boilers. They'd found it. The control room just erupted. People were cheering, screaming, slapping each other on the back. It was this incredible moment of triumph.
And then, in the middle of all this celebration, someone just happened to look at the clock. It was 2 a.m., and an innocent voice in the room just says, "She sinks in 20 minutes." The Titanic went down at 2:20 a.m. As Ballard tells it, that one simple comment completely changed everything. The party just stopped. The room fell silent. And they all realized they weren't just looking at a shipwreck. They were at a gravesite. The thrill of discovery just vanished, and was replaced by this profound moment of respect for the 1,500 souls lost right there, on that exact spot.
So you see, in the end, the Titanic is so much more than just a shipwreck. It's this deeply human story about hope, about devastating mistakes, about terrible inequality, and the raw calculus of a crisis. And it leaves us with a question that feels just as relevant today as it did back in 1912. In our own world, filled with our own seemingly unsinkable technologies, what icebergs are we just failing to see?